You are tuned into a live streaming engagement by the Bank of Namibia. Very good morning to you. My name is Kadembire Dembruka, Director of Strategic Communications here at the bank. Ask the Governor is a platform developed to addressing critical issues and questions posed by you on our various social media platforms. This is also an opportunity to engage directly with the Governor of the Bank of Namibia, Mr. Johannes Kabagap, live on our Facebook page. We've asked you to send through questions pertaining to the bank's functions and day-to-day activities, and have taken note of those who have engaged us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. This engagement will last for a good hour or so. If you have just joined us and you didn't get a chance to ask your questions, please feel free to capture them in the comment section on this Facebook platform, and we'll address them during the span of this program. If we are unable to do so, we'll obviously get back to you and address those pertinent questions a bit later on. But we have so much to get through this morning. Let me now welcome the Governor of the Bank of Namibia to address you and I on this Tuesday morning. A very good morning to you, Governor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning and good morning to your viewers. It's really a pleasure to be here today.
Governor, this is the second time that the Bank of Namibia is staging this platform, a platform really created to engage with the public members out there on the functions and the mandate of the bank. Why is this particular platform so important?
This is part of our stakeholder engagement. Through this, we try and educate the public about the mandate, the responsibility of the Bank of Namibia. So we are doing public education because we get a sense from time to time that the public and some other people would like to know more about what we are trying to do. So this is public education, and through public education, we effectively discharge the mandate of the Bank of Namibia. Let me talk a little bit about the mandate of the Bank of Namibia, because the more we talk about that, the more we will probably get a better understanding of what we intend to do. So the Bank of Namibia is a constitutional body established under Article 128 of the Namibian Constitution. So it is Namibia's monetary authority. It's the state's principal instrument to manage and control currency, money supply, banking, and any other function ordinarily performed by a central bank. So what we do is we really oversee the commercial banks in the country. We manage and issue currency for the country. And the core mandate of the Bank of Namibia is to ensure we have got monetary stability and we have got financial stability. And I need to really explain this monetary stability. Many people are asking, what do you mean by this monetary stability? Monetary means something to do with money and with price. So we need to make sure that the money that you have got in your hand, or the money that you have got in your savings, we try and help reserve the purchasing value of that currency that you have got. For financial stability, what we mean by that is if you have got money, your hard-earned savings that you have put in banks, deposited with banks, and you want to store it for other day, we need to make sure that the soundness and the stability of the banks are good enough so that you don't lose your hard-earned money. That is financial stability, meaning our banks and our institutions in the financial system are stable, they are sustainable. If you come after 2 years, they'll be able to give you the money that you've put in. That is what we mean by financial stability. So that is the core of the mandate of the Bank of Namibia.
You also often get the, when the queries around loans. When some public members see the word bank, they probably think that this is a commercial bank or an institution where I can get a loan from. Maybe if you can just explain that and demystify that, because often, public members may get confused by just seeing the word Bank of Namibia, therefore I can come and open a bank account.
So the Bank of Namibia is a banker only for two institutions of two entities. We are the banker for the government of the Republic of Namibia. And secondly, we are the banker for the commercial banks in the country. So it means that those are the two entities whom we have got a direct relationship. As an individual person, you cannot come and open an account with the Bank of Namibia. If you want to open an account, you need to go to the commercial banks or to any other savings institution that's authorized in the country. So we cannot also give any loans, or we don't do lending to members of the public. So we need to clarify that we are only bankers for commercial banks, and we are only bankers for the Republic of Namibia. So the various ministries of the government, whether it's Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of International Relations, they have got accounts with the Bank of Namibia because they are part of the government that we have got. They don't have accounts with commercial banks. They have got accounts with the central bank.
All right. Thank you so much, Governor. Let's now get to your questions, because you've been sending us various questions dealing with various activities of the bank. And primarily, let's start with the economy, because I'm sure that all of us are concerned about the state of the economy and its fortunes, especially its revival that we have always been looking out for. In the past year, we have seen the economy picking up. But this year, we are seeing developments globally that threaten that revival of the economy. So the first question from you that is directed to the governor of the bank is, how severe is the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war on the Namibian economy? Governor?
A persistent escalation of hostilities between Russia and Ukraine is not good for the Namibian economy, in the sense that it creates quite a lot of challenges for us. And I'll probably, before I give you more detail, highlight and summarize 4 or 5 key highlights, how this impacts the Namibian consumer and us in the country. The first one that we all have seen already is food and fuel prices, or energy prices, have increased already. So we're going to feel that in our pocket. We have not done anything wrong. No one has done anything wrong in this country. Because of the imported inflation and because of the crisis that we see in Ukraine, we're going to feel that in our pockets. And I'll unpack that later for you. The second biggest impact that we'll see is that inflation. Inflation is going to increase in all likelihood in our country. And this is very much, as the economists will call it, a cost-push inflation. It is not driven by demand or the economic recovery as yet. It's at this point in time driven by the developments, supply disruptions that we have got, the imported inflation that we have got. So the third one is all the farmers importing fertilizers will be feeling the pinch, the impact of this. Because between Ukraine and Russia, they are responsible for about 1/3, about 34% of all fertilizers produced in the world. And if we talk about fertilizers, we are talking about nitrogen, we are referring to phosphate, and we are referring to potassium. So if you have got fertilizers that are dependent on those commodities, you probably will have to pay heavily in terms of increase in those components and also in terms of transporting those components to get it to your country. And then we're also going to see other impact that we have got. So you'll see that importers, wholesalers, and retailers faced with this increase in inflation could increase the prices of their products, and we'll see the overall inflation levels in the economy. Increase in inflation is not good, as it has got effect of eroding the purchasing power of consumers, and thus reduce demand for goods and services in the economy. The other impact that you'll see is that the banks will probably have to take the decisions. If inflation increases, the Bank of Namibia has got a duty to look at a policy stance that's appropriate for the increasing inflation. It's generally accepted that if the inflation increases, interest rates are affected one way or the other. And how that is working is that the Bank of Namibia at some point will have to make a call on interest rates. And if interest rates are increased, you will probably see that your monthly payments on your mortgage, your monthly payments on your overdraft, or your monthly payments on the vehicle that you have got on HP, or you have purchased through financing by the bank, you'll see all those that will increase.
I guess, Governor, maybe let me lead to this natural progression of this statement. Now that the economy is recovering, this person is asking, why is the bank increasing interest rates, which could slow down the recovery and hurt households and businesses struggling to stay afloat?
That's a very good question, actually. I said initially when I spelled out the mandate of the Bank of Namibia that the responsibility of the bank is to make sure that we have got monetary stability. So you see currently, if we have got inflationary pressures and inflation runs away, and as a Bank of Namibia, we don't do anything, what will happen is we'll get to a situation where we need to act quite late, and when we act late, the increases we will probably consider at that point is going to be very large. So what we are trying to do now is to act quickly so that we anchor inflation expectations, so that we deal with any inflationary pressure that there are in the system. So that's why we are doing that. If we don't do that, we will have a situation where inflation is becoming a big issue. And you remember, despite the fact that many people actually think that inflation and interest rates are high, it's not the case. If you look back 10 years, in 1998, for instance, we had an inflation around 21%. Where we are talking about, we're still talking about inflation that's around 4.5%, 5% at this point in time. It could increase depending on what happened in terms of the geopolitical issues that we have got. But to answer your point, if we don't act in the face of increasing inflation, we allow inflation to run out of control, and we also allow inflation expectations to be negative for the economy. That's why we need to act quickly and we need to act gradually.
Obviously, the Monetary Policy Committee that is chaired by the governor will be meeting next week to assess all of these economic and financial conditions prevalent at this point in time and arrive at an appropriate stance, as the governor just stated. Let me go back to this particular question because it ties in with what are we to do about this particular situation. And this person is asking, with the recent sharp rise in fuel and other commodity prices, how can the food security of the country be ascertained to ensure that we don't end up with food shortages?
The ultimate objective of monetary policy in Namibia is to maintain price stability. In achieving it, this broad objective, the Bank of Namibia has an intermediate target to promote an economic and financial environment that will ensure sustenance of the 1-to-1 parity between the Namibia dollar and the South African rand. In this regard, the bank maintains the stock of international reserves at levels adequate to cover Namibia's international transactions. And I need to also explain that. If we talk about reserves, we are setting aside money in layman's term for Namibia to be able to do two things. One, to be able to pay for all its imports, and secondly, also being able to service its foreign debts. So that's why we have got this arrangement being a member of the CMA, that we need to defend the PEC at all times.
And when we are referring to defending the PEC, because sometimes our stakeholders may not appreciate that, what does that entail? When you say the Monetary Policy Committee has arrived at this particular decision, you want to safeguard the one-to-one parity between the Namibian dollar and the South African rand, but also you want to stimulate domestic economic activity. The safeguarding of that PEC, what does that entail?
Yeah. So what it means, it's a very good question actually, that we need to understand what we are busy with. When Namibia became independent, Namibia decided to fix its currency, or the Namibian dollar, at par or on par to the South African rand. And for this, there are certain obligations that Namibia need to meet. One of that is, for any Namibian dollar that we are issuing, we are expected to have equivalent amount in hard currency in our reserves. If we don't do that, we don't honor the obligation. If we just continue to print money as we like in this current country, and there is not an equivalent backup of a hard currency, then we are acting contrary to the agreement that we have got with the South African government or South African Reserve Bank, which is the anchor country in this point in time.
All right, thank you so much, Governor. We are reflecting on questions that you've been sending through since last week on this installment of Ask the Governor. We do like the fact that you've been throwing all manner of questions, whether it's from monetary policy, which is the core mandate of the bank, but also other questions around fees and charges, the regulations of the banking sector. We'll be coming back to those questions after this short break. Please stay with us.
I purposefully highlight these nascent mega projects to demonstrate that our future is indeed bright. We need to actually recast the narrative that we have got in our country. What is required is a paradigm shift to recognize these possibilities and reposition ourselves accordingly. By maximizing the opportunities above, we will ultimately grow the economy and create wealth for the majority of our people. We will grow the cake and ensure equitable access and opportunity. GROW is the acronym we must recall as we embrace these new game changers in our economy and maximize the value while harnessing the endowment for future generations. And if we need to unpack this acronym, the G in GROW stands for green hydrogen. The R in GROW stands for resources. Those are all mineral resources, whether they are diamonds or whether they are any minerals that are rare that we'll discover in our country at some point. The O stands for oil and the W for wealth creation. That's GROW. We need to remember that because these are game changers. These are times for us to come together as a nation and put opinions and emotions aside. I ask you to join Namibia on this transformative journey, grab the possibilities that GROW will provide, and optimally contribute to the growth of a prosperous Namibia. As for the Bank of Namibia, we remain totally committed and will continue in our quest to support the economy, particularly these new industries, with the necessary policy research that will maximize the benefits of these resources to the majority of our people. We have got a branch in Oshakati. The Bank of Namibia should explore establishing its presence in the southern part of the country, closer to the action, in order to acquire first-hand information and data on these key economic efforts, while also delivering superior macroeconomic and microeconomic analysis for all stakeholders. Permit me to discuss some reasons for my renewed optimism and hope in Namibia. We are excited about the prospects of green hydrogen and its economic potential. the prospective investment of between 6 to 9 billion US dollars is absolutely astounding, with the ability to revolutionize the structure of our economy and spark downstream businesses. With its abundant world-class renewable energy resources and increasing demand for green hydrogen worldwide, Namibia is quickly emerging as an early entrant in this new market. In this regard, Namibia's ambitions of becoming the leading exporter of green hydrogen on the African continent and to help the world achieve its quest for net zero or low carbon emissions are within sight. It is innovative and deliberate actions such as these that will bring the much needed reforms to recover, grow our economy, and to create employment for our country.
You're tuned into a live streaming engagement live from the headquarters of the Bank of Namibia. We have a couple of questions that you've been sending through to the governor. We are reflecting on them, and he's responding to all of the questions that you may have. A particular question that keeps on coming back is really that households and businesses are struggling to stay afloat. We are seeing a situation with global inflation also ticking up. What is happening on the inflationary front? Governor, maybe if you can respond to that, but also the question that we are seeing on our chat there around petrol and obviously fuel and other commodity prices that have been on the increase. What is the bank's mandate around this particular issue?
Yeah. The bank is aware that the bank customers and Namibians in general face higher lending costs as well as higher repayments on installments and loans, as well as simply they pay quite a lot for food and inflation. What's happening, we should see also what's happening in the world. And globally, central banks are tightening monetary policy in response to current inflationary developments in an effort to contain rising inflation. We are also not different. Before we make a call on interest rate decisions, we look at all economic data, we look at monetary data, we do financial analysis, and based on that, the bank's monetary policy committee makes a decision. And they've been always ensured that maintenance of the one-to-one link between the Namibia dollar and the South African rand is respected. It is paramount that the peg is defended as part of the obligations that Namibia has got as part of the CMA arrangement. Furthermore, the MPC has expressed concern about the current negative interest rate environment, which may stifle long-term growth, and has indicated that it will normalize negative interest rates. You know, we also need to understand there are quite a lot of people who are saving currently their hard-earned money. And what they're earning on the savings is negative. What it means is it's less than what inflation is. So we need to at some point normalize that. So it's a balancing act between how do we help the economy to grow? How do we help the economy to stimulate? That's on the one hand. How do we help people that are saving, particularly our pensioners, so that they have got a positive return on their savings? That's on the one hand. We need to balance that against how do we make sure that we contain inflation? How do we ensure that inflation expectations, what's going to happen on inflation 6, 9, 12 months down the line, that's contained and managed and anchored. Because if people know inflation is not going to be in 6 months, you know, contained or well behaved, you know, we have got challenges around the expectations. And individuals, economic agents are going to start behaving totally differently. So that's why we need to make sure that expectations as far as inflation are concerned are purely anchored.
All right. Thank you, Governor. Let's now step off from the monetary policy questions that you may have. We've also seen those in the chat box as well, but obviously we have taken care of those questions on the fuel increases and the economic situation that is prevalent at this point in time. Let's get to another question around the financial landscape. This particular stakeholder is asking, how will the financial landscape be prepared to ensure stability of the financial systems Should the bank not create more awareness around issues of digital currencies to prevent ordinary Namibians from participating in some of the schemes? And then I think the governor, you recently mentioned the CBDCs, and what is the solution that the Bank of Namibia is presenting to stakeholders around CBDCs?
So when we talk about CBDCs, we talk about central bank digital currencies. As the Bank of Namibia, we welcome innovations on this front as they can ensure meaningful participation of our people, especially those in rural areas and those in the informal economy, SMEs. So we talk about informal economy, we talk about taxi drivers, we talk about farm workers, we talk about domestic workers, we talk about petrol attendants, the informal economy where people are doing business. Like most central banks, the Bank of Namibia is researching central bank digital currencies. What we are seeing globally is that money is undergoing one of the biggest changes since the Chinese introduced paper money over about 1,000 years ago. The number and value of cryptocurrencies have surged, raising the possibility of a financial world operating outside the control of governments and central banks. There is thus a need for central banks to have a very clear digital currency agenda to reinforce central bank authority over money and maintain control over the payment system. The proposed digital agenda should be crafted through consultation with governments, through consultation with commercial banks and the public. And the potential objectives advanced by these stakeholders will be many and varied, but not necessarily compatible. And the design of a digital currency will have to involve trade-offs, notably between privacy and identity-based services, and between centralized versus distributed control. CBDCs do have a financial stability implication through disintermediating banks, particularly commercial banks, and potentially is a threat to monetary sovereignty. As policymakers, we need to ensure these concerns are addressed, but that we have a financial system that is stable and sound, which fosters innovation and promotes competition and trust. So we cannot ignore CBDCs. It is a reality out there. And for that reason, the Bank of Namibia has started researching CBDCs, and very soon we'll go out with this consultation that I'm talking about, consulting the government, the commercial banks, the stakeholders that are affected by this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Governor, let's move on then. Fifth question, how can the Bank of Namibia help government to improve vaccine hesitancy? Is there a concern of another wave of COVID-19 infections as winter is approaching?
It's a good question. As far as COVID is concerned, we are not out of the woods. COVID pandemic is very unpredictable. Despite a welcome relaxation of restrictions and a drop in infections on a local level, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to loom globally and also in Namibia. What we have seen yesterday were quite scary figures that came in last night about what's happening at our schools. So we are not out of the woods here. So the best medicine that we have got is really go to vaccinate our people, particularly the ones that are unvaccinated. We know that lower infection rates are beneficial to the recovery of our tourism industry, which has been devastated by COVID-19. If the current positive trend continues and international travel is not restricted, we anticipate a revitalized sector in the next 12 to 18 months. We hope we'll get back where COVID is contained, we open up and tourists can come and visit our country, and then we can, globally we have seen what's happening just before the Easter now. We've seen at some of the international airports where, demand for travel is picking up. For our part, we should use this time to continue practicing the necessary precautionary measures in order to avoid a relapse into pandemic proportions. In other words, we should continue to emphasize that COVID-19 may return. We must always be on the lookout for any spikes and to learn with the virus.
Yeah, very good point there, Governor. Let's move on. Will modernization of financial systems not add to unemployment? I think this particular stakeholder has been following your message around reforming the financial sector, reforming the financial system within the country. Will that not add to unemployment?
Yes, we need to understand what is that we are trying to achieve. When we say we want to modernize financial system, we want to do it for two key reasons. The first reason is to make sure modernize to include the excluded people. Modernize the financial system to drive the cost of services down. So that is what we are talking about. So whenever you automate, without a doubt, the innovations we are witnessing will result in the elimination of certain jobs in the financial sector. As we speak, brick and mortar services are being transformed, and as a result, tellers, for instance, and other workers will no longer be required to perform certain tasks. You'll get machines, robots, to perform functions that are ordinarily performed by tellers. What we have noticed is that the sector isn't mass laying of workers, but rather investing in reskilling and upgrading the skill profiles of the existing workforce. So modernization of the financial system does not necessarily imply that unemployment will worsen. Through modernization of the financial system, access to financial services is expected to increase further. So what is incumbent upon businesses? You need to identify the parts of your business that's getting automated. And then you need to define who are the people that will be affected by this automation, and then start thinking about how do we reskill them, or how do we redeploy these employees. And don't wait until after automation and then ask what do we do with the employees that are affected.
Well, staying on this particular trend of modernization of financial system, this particular stakeholder is asking what will the impact be on rural communities, especially those that are not familiar with technology?
The challenges of electricity and internet connectivity are more pronounced in rural areas. However, electronic wallets and other mobile banking solutions are already present in rural areas. Alive to these challenges, we are presently investigating a number of solutions and are benchmarking with other countries, such as India, on some solutions for the informal economy and rural areas to enhance financial inclusion. And progress in this space is advancing, and we'll make public announcements very soon in this regard. Governor,
let's turn to another popular point of discussion on cryptocurrencies, if we may, because Mr. Mutenya is asking, do you have a team looking into blockchain and cryptocurrency for potential involvement? If we can just move to that question on cryptocurrency.
Yes, what we have done is, you have probably seen that we have set up a team that we called, Mavericks around innovation. So we set up innovation hub in the Bank of Namibia. We've asked the team to basically look at both what type of innovation can we drive in the bank. One of the key strategic objectives of the bank is digital transformation. And with this team of Mavericks, innovative Mavericks, we are trying to really address the whole issue around innovation, around digitalization of the bank, as well as the financial system.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Governor. We'll take a quick break. When we return, more of your questions. We can see how active you have been on our comment section. We'll come back with those questions after this short break.
Now is the time for our vibrant and talented Namibian youth to position themselves for this new future by proactively equipping themselves with the necessary skills. There are several opportunities to further study in green hydrogen technology, especially. As such, it is up to young Namibians to take advantage of these opportunities. Our human development endeavor in both the public and private sectors should align with these burgeoning industries on the horizon, so we rely less on foreign skills.
You are still tuned into our live stream engagement with the Governor of the Bank. Ask the Governor is the name of this particular engagement. We continue to respond to all of the questions that you've been sending to us, and you have really flooded us with a number of questions since last week. We are seeing those that are in the comments section. We'll be attending to them as well. So, Governor, the question around the financial sector and how we are modernizing the financial sector is quite important. And this particular stakeholder is asking, is the Namibian market ready for fintechs?
Yes, the use of technology to provide and enhance the provision of financial services is not new. The financial industry has always been on the cutting edge of technological advancement. The accelerated emergence of fintechs, however, has compelled central banks, including the Bank of Namibia, to examine the adequacy of the legal and regulatory frameworks, as well as explore more flexible approaches to engage with fintechs while being mindful of the accompanying risk and potential opportunities. On this score, the Bank of Namibia introduced a fintech innovations regulatory framework which provides direction on how fintech innovations that are not presently subject to the bank's existing regulations be treated. So if you have got any new innovation in fintech, you are welcome to contact the Bank of Namibia. We could guide you, we could give you some parameters to explore real time of some of the innovations. So given these observations and in line with the bank's strategy 2022 to 24 and the National Payment System Vision 2025, the Bank of Namibia responded accordingly by introducing a fintech innovations regulator framework to appropriately support this shift and to ensure that innovations within these regulatory boundaries are carefully considered for the benefit. And if you talk about benefit, we mean efficiency, safety, effectiveness of entrepreneurs, of consumers, and the broader financial system. So we're really inviting all the fintech entrepreneurs in the country. If you have got an innovation, you feel the country can benefit, do contact us. Don't be bothered that we don't have the regulations of the laws. We'll provide the parameters for you, like most of the regulators and central banks are doing, and you can really pilot some of the projects you may have in real time.
All right, Governor. Freddie is asking, can I buy shares in the Bank of Namibia?
Freddie, unfortunately not. The bank is wholly owned by the government of Namibia and therefore does not sell shares to individuals, Freddie. Sorry about that.
Well, Mr. Shilumbu is asking, does the Bank of Namibia monitor giving out loans by Agribank and other commercial banks?
Yeah, we monitor loans because there's some credit risk by commercial banks. We also look at what's happening in the entire financial system. Yeah, but Agribank is not under the regulatory purview of the Bank of Namibia. However, lending by commercial bank is one of the aspects the bank monitors in relation to its supervisory mandate.
So Shilumbu continues, retired pensioners should not be given out loans, that's his view, as it is very difficult to service them at exorbitant interest rates.
This is something in the hands of commercial banks in terms of the internal lending processes. So most of the banks normally have go through the risk, and based on your risk profile, they decide what do they charge you.
This stakeholder is asking, we have already a lot of South African-based and controlled institutions as far as banks are concerned. When will we see a transformed sector with Namibians owning these institutions?
Most of the commercial banks in Namibia are listed on the Namibian Stock Exchange. That provides an avenue for participation of Namibians in terms of ownership. Additionally, we have top Namibian managers at the helm of these commercial banks and taking key decisions. That's good progress. But that doesn't take away, if any Namibian would want to set up a bank, they think they have got a capital base, they have got the technological instruments and base, and they've got the people, they can really set it up. But if you don't, and you want to own of the commercial banks, all you really need to do is to approach the stock exchange and buy shares in the listed entities.
That's obviously a far cry from before, when some of these institutions were only known or were only excluding ownership of the broad majority of the Namibian public. At present, you can participate in ownership. And obviously also things like pension funds that we are all members of also participate in terms of ownership of some of these institutions. So they are really not foreign as such.
Yeah, you are spot on. You have actually nailed it. As pension fund members, most of the pension funds are institutional investors in most of these banks that are listed on the stock exchange. So through your membership of the pension fund, you indirectly own that. But if you really want to own directly, there's nothing that stops you from buying a share on the stock exchange in the banks.
Mm-hmm. I think, Governor, we have addressed this question around what is the difference between the central bank and the commercial bank, commercial banks within the country. Maybe if we can step to another question, please. All right, I think we have also responded to this question around opening an account at the Bank of Namibia. This one is quite popular and it keeps on coming back. Governor, are there plans to de-link the Namibian dollar from the South African rand?
Let me make it clear again for the umpteenth time. There are no plans or intention for Namibia to de-link the dollar from the South African rand, because the benefits of linking the Namibia dollar to the South African rand are higher than those of de-linking. Some of the benefits are inflation in Namibia is generally lower due to the fact that through linking the Namibia dollar to the rand, as a country, we import low and stable prices from South Africa. De-linking could compromise this benefit and lead to high inflation. Presently, Namibians who import goods from South Africa are exempted from paying transaction costs, which would have been required if Namibia dollar was not linked to the South African rand. Thus, imports from South Africa are presently less expensive than they might be if the Namibia dollar was de-linked. So at this point in time, the benefits outweigh the cost. We have got no intentions of de-linking.
Mm-hmm. Good. Moxa Alushe is asking, we have a serious problem with bank charges which are not justifiable. Can the Bank of Namibia please evaluate commercial banks' charges to their clients? This is also a recurring question, Governor.
Yeah, this is a very, very sensitive issue for most of our countrymen and women. So as the Bank of Namibia, we had a number of interventions to mitigate the perceived high fees and charges. And the first one is we've really done a lot to make a dent and to mitigate this. And we have passed a number of regulations. The first one is PSD 5, where that deals with cash deposits, where we really try and make it as affordable in terms of fees for cash deposits for our people. We also had regulations around PSD 10 that reduced the fees related to wallets that we have got. We even have gone further to sort of regulate that at least one withdrawal on the wallets is free of charge. You know, we've done regulations that in the past, just to print one page of your bank statement at the banks would cost you 15 Namibian dollars. That has reduced to 1 Namibia dollar per page. So we have come up with regulations to help our people to mitigate against this. Secondly, we are currently looking at fees and charges more holistically. Our focus so far has been to look at fees and charges more within the payments and settlements area. But it would seem to us that fees and charge complaints are dealing with the entire banking services that are being provided that transcends payments. And we are currently looking at, is there anything we can do by looking holistically? The third one is around transparency. So here we have requested most of the banks, and we have strengthened disclosures. You know, banks are now required by law to disclose fees and charges to their customers. That's efforts that we have taken. We have also looked at the concerns from the banks. The banks are telling us, you know, that one of the reasons why fees and charges are quite high in Namibia is because of economies of scale, scalability. Some towns are relatively, and some customers are not profitable for some banks to continue, and they need to charge high fees and charges. And if you just look at the year 2021, we had about 50 million ATM withdrawals of cash, totaling about 37 billion Namibian dollars. That's conducted in the year 2021. 50 million ATM withdrawals, and if you look at the amount involved, that was about 37 billion Namibian dollars. You know, if you compare that with the currency that was in circulation for the entire 2021, at the end of December 2021, we had currency in circulation of about 4.63 billion Namibian dollars. So our people still like to have physical cash, whether they deposit that or whether they actually withdraw that. And because of this handling fees in physical cash, you know, the banks are of the view that they need to somehow compensate for physical cash and the handling of physical cash. So that's the arguments, but as a Bank of Namibia, we are trying to see how best we could help here.
Governor, we do thank you for that response, and we are in the final throes of our program because we have really attempted to exhaust all of the questions that you have sent to us. Those that are in the chat box, we have seen those coming through, and we thank you so much for your participation. Let me just quickly glance through the comment page, whether I can get anything from there. Carlos Steiner, thank you so much for your contributions as well. We have attempted to respond to your questions much earlier in the engagement, and hopefully we can return to you if you have any other follow-ups to the responses that we have provided this morning. So, Governor, as we wrap up this session, maybe you have been at the helm of the central bank now for a little over 2 years, and just in December, the Bank of Namibia launched its strategy. Obviously, you have crystallized this vision for the bank, and also a sort of focus in 3 key areas that you think the central bank needs to focus on if it is to support the country and supports the country's prosperity endeavor. Maybe as we wrap up, what continues to keep you awake at night as far as the mandate of the bank is concerned, and where you see the next 3 years playing out in terms of executing the strategy that the bank has come up with and that is now currently being executed?
So what we are trying to do is, at the Bank of Namibia, apart from the statutory mandate that we have got, what we need to do is to have a central bank that is working towards prosperity for Namibia. So what keeps me awake at night is basically 3 things. How do we digitally transform the central bank? You know, we have got quite a lot of manual processes, whether it's government payments, whether it's our own internal operation. We are currently redesigning all those to automate that. That's what keeps us busy. How do we transform? There's nothing wrong. We have been doing automatic, manual processes. They've been functioning pretty well. But, we can get more efficiencies by automating some of our own processes. We can get efficiencies by automating some of government payments. So that's the first big one. The second bucket is around how do we modernize the financial system in the country so that we include Namibians that have been left out so far. That's the second big one. And more, you'll see the developmental role of the Bank of Namibia coming through very strongly. Section 73 of the Bank of Namibia Act talks about our developmental role. And how do we assist the country through conducting evidence-based, fact-based research that can help policy making in the country? So you will see more and more that we are doing in terms of how do we help the economy to restore so that we can create jobs, so that we can make a dent in poverty, so that we can make a dent in inequality through research that we are conducting in the bank. That's what keeps us busy. Not only myself, but the entire team at the Bank of Namibia. And I can assure you, we have got people that are totally committed, that are passionate about helping deliver these three key objectives that I've exposed to you.
Obviously, for organizational success, what is required, or the formula there is, you need internal capability. You obviously also need to build bridges by creating alliances and strategic alliances out there with your stakeholders. And if you have these two, you are able to guarantee some success. As you continue to emphasize internal capability for the central bank to do all of those things, how are we taking the stakeholders along this journey?
So this is but one of the examples of trying to take the stakeholders on this journey. Try and explain our mandate, trying to take questions from them, anticipate questions from them, and address, communicate what is that we are trying to achieve in terms of our mandate, in terms of the role that we want to play. So this, as the governor, is an effort on our part to reach out to our stakeholders, to explain ourselves what we are trying to achieve.
Mr. Johannes Kabachap, thank you so much for joining us on Ask the Governor. And that's where we leave matters. We've asked you to share some of your questions, suggestions, and comments in the comment section. Some questions may have been a repetition from those that have already been addressed. If you missed the first part of the engagement, this engagement will remain on our Facebook page. The next engagement is likely to take place before the end of the second quarter of the year, and I'm sure the governor is looking forward to another session as well. Well, from me, Kadembile Dembruka, Director of Strategic Communications here at the bank, until next time, bye-bye.